Hey everyone, I'm Mark, and today we're going to cover everything that I would have wanted to know if I was just getting into flight simming right now. And my goal by the end of this video is to give you a 10,000 foot view of the entire hobby in the context of Flight Sim 2024. We're going to look at what you need in terms of hardware, what there is to do in the world, all the different types of skills you'll need to develop, and a ton more. So make sure that you stick around if you want to see how far you can go with this hobby. Flight Sim 2024 is available on both Xbox and PC, so if you already have an Xbox but don't have a gaming PC, it can be an easy way to get started without committing yourself too much. It's an okay place to start. It has all of the same features as on PC, but you're going to run into more limitations with Xbox, most notably with the overall experience and extensibility. It really seems like there are more issues on Xbox than on PC overall, on top of having access to fewer peripherals, from sticks to yokes and everything else in between, and having much less add-on content available too. You're also limited from a hardware perspective because it's not like you can upgrade an Xbox, whereas a PC can be pretty easily improved over time if need be, either by yourself or a computer shop. The other advantage to running Flight Sim on PC is that you can access the full ecosystem, so all of the payware aircraft and third-party tools, and you're not limited to the peripherals that are compatible with Xbox. In other words, the PC route is the best option if you're looking to really deep dive into this hobby, but it will set you back a fair bit more depending on the screen resolution that you want to run it at, as well as if you want to do VR. Flight Sim has always been notorious for being demanding on hardware, so as a general rule, you're going to need a PC with a strong CPU that's meant for gaming, at least 32 gigabytes of RAM, and a video card with the most VRAM that you can afford. If all you're planning on flying are small planes at 1080p, you can probably get away with a video card with 12 gigabytes of VRAM, but if you're looking to fly airliners or you want a 2K or 4K screen resolution, you're really going to want to look at 16 gigabytes or more. The same is true if you're planning on flying in VR. It really needs top-of-the-line hardware to have a truly rich experience. Although it can work with an average gaming PC, you just won't be able to push it quite as much in terms of the graphics settings. As for hard drive space, your needs will be closely tied to your internet plan, since by default everything in Flight Sim is streamed to your computer, including the world around you and the plane that you're flying. For someone like me who's on an unlimited and gigabit data plan, you don't need a ton of free space because it's going to stream the content to you, but Sim Update 3 brings the ability to download a lot of that content once and keep it there forever. This is obviously interesting if you don't have unlimited internet, since it can save you a lot of cap space over time, but in that case you'll definitely want at least a terabyte of free space to be future-proof. When it comes to peripherals, you can technically fly with just a mouse and keyboard, but at a bare minimum, I'd say it's worth getting an entry-level joystick because it'll dramatically improve your experience without breaking the bank. The big three items when it comes to peripherals are the side stick, the throttle, and the rudder pedals, but most entry-level controllers come with a twist action that can simulate the rudder, and also a very rudimentary throttle as well. Even with something as simple as that, you're set to be able to fly any type of plane, but there is of course a ton more that you can get, from multifunction and dedicated throttles to specialized airliner panels. The flexibility is really endless. You also don't need to get all of this gear to start enjoying Flight Sim either. For the longest time, I used a multi-purpose joystick exactly like I just described, and then you can add more things around it if your interest grows. The core of Flight Sim is really free flight, which gives you the freedom to fly any type of plane that you want at any airport, time of day, or weather that you want to replicate. Getting to the point where you feel comfortable putting yourself in any situation though is a very long road, and for that reason most people start out with a general aviation plane like the C-172. Single engine pistons like this are perfect for learning the ropes and doing local exploration, since things happen fairly slowly and it gives you an easy environment in which to learn everything. From there, you have a few different ways you can go, and if you like the idea of backcountry flying, there are some fun bush planes to explore remote strips in the mountains that can really challenge your skills. On the other hand, stepping up to 2-engine pistons or turboprops allows you to cover much bigger distances, and to give you a rough idea, you can get from New York to Boston in just over an hour with them, so it really starts to open up the world for you. Of course, if you want to travel even longer distances, business jets and airliners are what you're going to want, and although a lot of people recommend doing a logical progression from smaller planes to larger ones, you can definitely skip a few levels in the middle once you've got the fundamentals sorted out. There's a ton more you can look into as well, from helicopters to gliders and more esoteric stuff like blimps and airships. And while Flight Sim isn't a combat simulator, you can fly military planes and warbirds, but there won't be any functional weapons. There's also two very broad ways of flying these planes, either with visual or instrument rules, and when you're just getting started, you should really focus on learning how to fly visually first because it'll pay off later. To put it simply, you can do VFR flying anytime that you can stay out of the clouds, and it's where real pilots start off too, because that's where you learn the basics of flying. Navigating from A to B is done by following landmarks on the ground like roads, rivers, and coastlines, and generally keeping your eyes outside of the cockpit to figure out where you are and where you want to go. You can back yourself up with a flight plan and a GPS if you really want, but planning and flying even short routes entirely visually is going to keep you engaged way more than if you're just following your GPS around. Instrument flying is different in the sense that you're relying almost entirely on your instruments to get you where you're going, and it allows you to fly in the clouds, fog, rain, and other conditions where there's just limited or no visibility. It's a really huge topic in the real world and therefore in Flight Sim as well, because it reproduces all of the same procedures, and a pretty common place to start is with ILS approaches, which are there to help you line up with a runway. There's a whole lot more to instrument flying than just that though, from following airways to adhering to specific altitudes on departure and arrival procedures. On top of learning the different types of approaches, there really is a ton to explore and get a grasp on. I would actually recommend stepping up to a slightly faster plane to learn instrument flying though, because in a C-172 everything happens really slowly and you're going to be limited from an airplane performance point of view. On top of all of that, if you're a fan of flying older planes with what's often called steam or round gauges, you can still fly them without a GPS entirely and navigate with old school techniques in the clouds, and it really ratchets up the difficulty level, but it's also incredibly satisfying to fly a full flight that way. There's also more to flight simming than just flying the plane, and be it for VFR or IFR flights, you'll have to go through the flight planning process, which includes figuring out your route, altitude, fuel requirements, and so on. In a lot of ways, today's desktop simulators are as close to the real world as we've ever had, obviously from the visuals point of view, but also from a flight model and systems perspective. The components you'll find in these planes are modeled on their real-world counterparts and have most of the same features, which is really fun because it gives you an insight into what they're actually like. That also increases the difficulty level to flying some of these planes, since you're effectively having to learn how they operate in the real world, but a lot of the flight preparations and systems knowledge transfers from one plane to the other. For example, once you know how to fly one Airbus, you can very easily jump into another one and pick it up fairly quickly, since the way things are laid out and how they work is very similar between them. Free flight really gives you that flexibility to set up whatever scenario you want, but if you're someone who needs more structure in your play, there are some options there too. The main one, which was the most anticipated thing and has received a lot of criticism since release, is career mode, which lets you build your career and companies out within a sandboxed environment. I personally don't find it too bad. It does make you think about how and what you'll do to complete a mission, but I feel like it's a bit too hard for beginners who have no knowledge of aviation, so I'd actually hold off on it until you've got the basics down. There are also a few other modes to get your feet wet, like World Photographer and the challenges, and it's fine if you're just looking for a quick in-game experience, but it's really not what Flight Sim is all about if you ask me. There are also 4 versions of Flight Sim available, including the Standard Edition, which is available on Xbox Game Pass, and it's what I recommend to complete beginners because it gives you more than enough to get started. You can always upgrade later if you want, or buy the individual planes that you're interested in from the in-game marketplace, but there are also a ton of add-ons that are available externally too. High quality add-ons take the experience to the next level, even for small general aviation planes, because there can be a huge leap in terms of how detailed the modeling is from an engine, avionics, and flight modeling perspective. In fact, when it comes to airliners, they can often come in at a price tag that's more than the base simulator itself because of how much effort has gone into simulate each system and component. There are also scenery add-ons that enhance the look and feel of the airports and the surrounding area, like giving it accurate taxiway markings, custom terminal buildings, and region-specific stuff that you won't get from the default scenery. Where the add-on market fits in is that it fills in the gaps that the base simulator doesn't address or that could be improved, and a good example of that is the different AI ATC tools that have come out in the last few years. Flight Sim ships with its own ATC system, but there are different payware add-ons that take it to the next level, so it gives you the option to make it better if you like, and the same thing applies to other types of add-ons as well, like all the different flight planning tools. And just to be clear on this point, you don't need to invest in add-ons right away. The base sim gives you plenty to explore when you're just starting out, but it's good to know that it's there waiting for you when you're ready to take that next step. As an absolute beginner, you can get up and flying in a very basic way pretty quickly with the in-game tutorials, especially if you leave most of the assistance options on. But if you want to go beyond just smashing the throttle down and blasting around everywhere, there is a lot of help there too. The resource that I wish I had back when I was first starting out is definitely YouTube, since there are guides on anything that you can imagine, from basic airmanship to airplane tutorials and setup and configuration videos. And if I don't have a video on it, you can be sure that someone else does. There's also a ton of help available online, be it through Discord servers or the official forums. A lot of the community is willing to help when you're stuck because we've all been there at one point or another. Even with all of that help available, it can be frustrating with complex machines to understand why something isn't working, and what can often seem like a bug is almost always going to be just pilot error. Probably the thing that helped me the most was recording my flights with something like OBS, because like that you can watch them back later and figure out where you went wrong. I know it can seem intimidating to get into flight simming because it is a vast field, but I want to emphasize that you don't need to be an aviation or a computer expert to get good at it. And what makes it so much fun for me is that it is actually such a big challenge, and all you really need is patience, practice, and a willingness to learn. I hope this gave you a good idea of the entire landscape of flight sim, and if you want to learn more, make sure to check out my other beginner guides and like and subscribe on your way out to get more similar content to this one.